So in this final workbook, we shall now look at employment policy, shall try to consider the scopes, the approaches of employment policy, and we shall later consider really how employment and unemployment can be considered social justice issues. So we shall start by outlining the broad scope of employment policy. We shall then try to identify the key institutional arrangement, and we shall speak briefly about how employment and unemployment can be regarded as social justice issues. So what is considered to be employment or unemployment policy? It's really anything that the government does or doesn't do to shape or intervene into the labor market. If you can recall what we said in week 1, government inaction is also regarded as a social policy intervention. Maybe just in a context where the government might perceive that this situation is not that much problematic to deserve a policy intervention. That's still considered also an aspect of social policy. So we shouldn't always just look at it as actions being taken, but also inaction can be regarded as an important aspect of social policy. So employment and unemployment policy gets to impact the availability of employment, the conditions of employment among those who get to work, and also the quality of paid work among population or citizens in a country. So this tells us that employment and unemployment policy really is very broad in scope and engages economic policies, industrial relations and working conditions, anti-discrimination laws, education and training policies, social security policy, which we spoke about, and even migration policies, which were our latest focus. That a whole heap of work conditions which are available to people with certain type of visa. There are specific type of visa if you are on those, like a student visa, for example. There is a certain amount of hours you are not allowed to work. And even some jobs are identified as for people only with PR or citizenship. And if you are still on a temporary visa, that might have implications on the kind of work you can get and so on and so forth. But also employment and unemployment policy also engages the question of access to the workforce, which we had started speaking about in the previous recordings. So we shall try to consider how all these aspects can shape employment and the question of access to employment in particular. It's very broad in scope, the employment policy. And as we started saying, it engages many other aspects, including economic policies. Those are the decisions to protect or not manufacturing, mining, and other sectors, or specific industry, including laws around regulating specific sectors, tax cuts to business, incentives for taking on certain sorts of workers. And again, this in itself can be cross-cutting. There is a whole heap of reasons why you would find that even for migrating to Australia, specific skills might be required. There are priority areas. For example, you will see sometimes social work might be considered priority areas to people who can get work visa to Australia. Community services, nursing, and so on and so forth. But whereas other skills, while they are still very important, they might not be prioritized. And even among those who are prioritized, there might be policies and incentives to, whether we want more people in regional areas and there can be specific point to those and specific benefits to workers who accept to go and work in regional areas compared to the workers who stay in the bigger cities. So you can see this specific aspect itself of economic policies, how they can, how they really fall under the scope of employment and unemployment policy, but at the same time touching on migration policies, which we shall be looking at again later on this same slide. So employment policy also engages working conditions, including questions of rates of pay, minimum wage, hour of work, unfair dismissal of members or workers, and even issues of unions, and including other specific questions of bullying at workplace and so on and so forth. Also engages anti-discrimination policies in the workplace, equal opportunity in recruitment, pay, and promotion considerations. Education and training policies is another scope or another area where we get to see which skills are on high demand in the labor market. And we get to focus more on those in universities and vocational training, but also welfare policies broadly, including job seeker allowance, disability pension, disability employment assistance, and all the other welfare benefits we have spoken about in the previous weeks. And of course, migration policies, which I had started explaining, where we get to feature specific skilled migration streams and specific subclasses for these work visa among people we might need the most. And again, all these questions are quite politicized. It's not just like they are always rational. It depends on what is on the agenda of the people in power. But also the question of access to the workforce. How do we get to organize childcare for, women, for example, and men who have children and still need to work, parental and carer leave, but also flexible work hours, and even all these questions now we are engaging in, including issues of working from home arrangements. So again, all those, you can see clearly how employment policy touches on many different things. I would have loved even to add here issues of work-induced stress and accidents at work, for example. We might see this a lot in specific sectors such as the mining or people working in the construction industry. If you get, to be injured at work, what happens? Are there laws regarding those kind of, insurance schemes and so on and so forth? So technically, employment and unemployment policy touches on a wide range of sectors and other sectors. So in terms of the institutional arrangements in Australia, while the employment outcomes are linked to decisions made by, different government departments, both federal and state, there are also key departments which are often involved. At the national level, the Department of Employment and Workplace Relations is the overarching government department, which is mostly in charge of organizing work and so on and so forth. And of course, it has specific strategic purposes which you might want to look at and see how those are being met. But maybe I have to mention here that even if we have this broader government department in charge of, overseeing employment and unemployment conditions, we still have other sectors intervening actually in one way or another, in an indirect way. For example, the Department of Home Affairs would still be, of course, would still be taking important decisions when it comes to work-related migration streams and visa conditions, whereas the Department of Health might be more in charge when it comes to questions regarding health, even in the workplace, and so on and so forth. And of course, you might want to look at the Queensland government and its specific department, which is in charge of, employment, the Department of Employment, Small Business, and Training. So yeah, the next two slides will provide more information on this, and you might want to consult those as well. Thank you.